It's no surprise that Claude or Anthropic has been going through some rough times. And I've been thinking about this a lot, trying to kind of pinpoint how we handle these types of situations going forward. And before I get into it, if you disagree in any way, please let me know in the comments below. Because what I'm trying to do is reconcile a few things. On one hand, we have a non-open source AI coding agent. So we have no idea what changes are actually happening. In fact, I'll show you some of the change release logs here in a second, just to give you an idea of what kind of limited information we get. On the second hand, we've had this company not really be that transparent. We all know, anybody that uses Anthropic directly knows they have trouble with AI stability, or API stability, maybe more specifically. Maybe those two things kind of go hand in hand. And the reason that I'm bringing this up is a part of the lack of trust that people are having in Anthropic or Claude Code is this sort of sweeping it under the rug, not addressing the problem, not really like being transparent about what's happening. And I see this in two ways. Like on one hand, I kind of can see it from Anthropic's point of view, because they probably don't realize that they've messed something up. I'm trying to like believe that they are being good actors. There's also, I would say, people that believe they are nerfing it. They are like lowering quality. They are dynamically quantizing. They're doing all these things to lower the model quality. So we have these two conflicting views. We have people that are thinking like, hey, Anthropic's just screwing up. It's a big company. They don't know what they're doing. Well, I would say they know what they're doing. They are incredible technical minds. They've built by far the longest standing best coding model on the market today. I would say it's on the verge of being dethroned, if not being caught up with finally, but it has been number one for a while. But then on the other hand, we've got people that think they are bad actors. And where do I fall in all of that? And the problem that I have, and it's the same problem that I had with Cursor. And I talked about Cursor a lot in the past. And I feel bad, like if you, like kind of bringing this up, but Cursor is a company that I actually loved. Huge fan of Cursor. I loved what they were doing. And then I learned the lack of transparency. I learned that they were nerfing things behind the scenes. You know, when you first go to that pricing page, this was back months ago, I don't know if it's changed now, you wouldn't see that they nerfed the context window. You'd have to dig into the fine print. I don't like that. I don't want to feel like I'm being lied to. So for weeks now, Anthropic has said, everything's fine. And the reason that I say that they've said this is simply because they've responded in no way. But I do want to give them some kudos, because over the last couple days, they have actually started responding. And I think this is important, because I want to call out one point here where they say a technical postmortem will be published on our engineering blog in the next week. I am incredibly excited about this. In fact, I posted on X that until they give us a deeper understanding of what went wrong, why it went wrong, and how they prevent it in the future, it's going to be hard having trust in them. The reason for that is we have an AI agent that's not open source. We have a Anthropic company that I would say is not really great at communicating. They have constant issues, API issues. They don't really communicate very well. Their release logs are not really good. So I just want to kind of give you that context as I kind of jump into this a little bit, because I think it's important for us to understand that there's a spectrum that Anthropic's playing on here. And the way I look at this spectrum is I see it in two ways. So so we can either go into this with they are bad actors. So they are actually trying to nerf the model. They are dynamically quantizing, whatever reason, right? Maybe it's too much demand. And I try to lead with the state of they are good actors. Not just they, but in general, I try to give people the benefit of the doubt. But still, I will be very critical of transparency. And you can see that if you go look at my last videos on Cursor. I was talking about Cursor before anybody else was talking about Cursor. So what does this mean? So today, we have 3 models that compete directly with Claude. But historically, there was really just Claude. So they didn't need to actually compete. Like they literally were just out here with all of the other ones chasing them. And what I mean by that is our best models for a while were like Gemini 2.5 Pro. And then we had, I don't know, O3 for some people. They really liked it. But then what came out? Honestly, what's happened, in my opinion, is GPT-5. And I will be honest, I was critical of GPT-5 because there are people that said it was the best coding model ever. And anytime a new model comes out, I like to give it time before I make that judgment. And I'm at a point now where I think if you learn to harness GPT-5, I do think it's on par, if not sometimes better, at certain tasks than Claude. We have a real competitor for Claude. And in this particular case, I'm talking about Sonnet 4. I just want to be very clear. That is, to me, the most like relatable one to talk about. But we also have several open source models. GLM 4.5, Q3C, which is Quint3 Coder, Kimi K2. And these models have just gotten incredibly good. And I would say at times, I would say they're even better than GPT-5, even better than Claude, but only at certain tasks. Not all tasks, certain tasks. So Claude is now, Anthropic, is now in a place where they need to fight to keep people on. They didn't have to fight before. Basically, they could, in theory, they could come off as, you know, basically if I were to kind of chalk this up, so this would be, you know, deceptive. They're quiet. They could do things that, like, we disagree with greatly. Now, did they do those things? We don't know, right? But people can speculate. So they could do whatever they wanted. And the reason for that was they were in the lead. They were the #1 coding AI on the market. And we've got to a point now to where you can't be deceptive. You can't be secretive. You can't, like, you have to be transparent. That'd be a better way to put it. And I think Sonnet, Anthropic, has actually seen that now. And I'm excited to read this technical postmortem and see what they put in. Hopefully this actually reveals something that's been going on here. Because I do have some evals for you. I had some things to go over, but I wanted to give you that context. Is that I think Sonnet has kind of been backed into a corner because it's not the only choice anymore. And it was, for a very long time, the only choice. And we could see this if you just go look at the numbers on OpenRouter. In fact, let's go pull that up right now. We're going to go look at the OpenRouter AI. We're going to look at rankings. And if you scroll down on rankings, this is the overall leaderboard. We're going to be looking at the programming category. Grok Code Fast. I still want to see what this is after all of the free stuff it's done. I forgot about that. I didn't even mention that. Grok Code Fast is like a huge value model. I'm curious where it's going to fall long term, but it's incredible. Then we have Sonoma Sky Alpha. Again, another free model, so you got to kind of take that with a grain of salt. GPT 4.1 Mini. This one, I think, is one that's actually really great for smaller tasks. GPT-5, Quint3 Coder. This one's actually dropped off a lot, which is surprising to me. We don't even see GLM 4.5. We still see DeepSeek V3.1, which is also another great model. So on the ones I showed you before, there's even more than that. So no longer is Sonnet 4 like the only dog in the race. They just aren't. I could literally go without Sonnet 4 and be totally fine. But yet I'm still paying $100 a month. Some people are paying $200 a month for their Claude Max subscription. And because of that, people feel a little bit cheated. Because when we see things like this, so resolved an issue, a small percentage of Claude Sonnet 4 requests. Okay, so a question here. What percentage? What is a small percentage? 35%? 3%? 2%? 1%? What does this mean? They're not clear enough here. They degraded output quality due to a bug from August 5th to September 4th. And between this time, I went and looked at Reddit. There were so many posting about the problems people were having. And during this time, I actually was using a lot of other models. So I actually got frustrated with Claude and really started using a bit more of other things. Quint3 Coder, Kimi K2, GLM 4.5. I actually still really love GLM 4.5. I'm actually on the Cerebrus code plan because I love Quint3 Coder. And with the impact increasing from August 29th to September 4th. So look at this time frame. Now, this is fascinating to me because if we go to my eval site, I just want to show you this. So when I actually ran, what I'm going to be looking for is Claude Code. I ran this on August 30th, and I grabbed the latest version. At that point, I always install the latest version when I run those tests. And that is right in this window. And notice how far down the list it is, 27. I even brought it up in this video that it was surprisingly low. And it was crazy to me that it had dropped so far. In fact, it was significantly lower than what I even expected. I expected a normal 26K range. Then they go on and say they resolved another issue from August 26th to September 5th for Sonnet 4 request and Haiku 3.5. I don't really care about the Haiku version. I don't use that for anything, but Sonnet 4 does matter. And they had to state this. Importantly, we never intentionally degrade model quality as a result of demand or other factors, and the issues mentioned above stem from unrelated bugs. Now, this goes back to where you think they are on this line. Are they being good actors or are they being bad actors? Because I feel, I try to, like I said, I take it from, I think everyone is trying to be good actors. And I think a lot of the problems that happen in these big companies is because of the bureaucracy, the slowness, I'm trying to think of the right words here, but I've been in large companies where everyone knows what needs to be done, but you don't have the leaders in place to make sure the right things happen, and you're not reacting quick enough to feedback. So why didn't they have evals in place to catch these things? Were they relying purely on vibe feels of Claude Code or Claude Sonnet 4? Like, I want to understand what they're going to do to make sure this doesn't happen again in the future. Now, if this was open source, totally different game. I could go look at every commit. I could see when it was happened. We could talk about when it would roll back, but it's not. So it's not transparent. So you need to make a decision where you kind of fall on this graph. If you fall on that they're being good actors, I would say the most likely culprit is they messed up for whatever reason, not testing properly. They pushed out stuff either without the right things in place. They don't have the right evals in place to understand that it's going to impact things. And we're talking about a million different use cases that Claude Sonnet 4 is used for. So there's no way to even eval all of it. So they could have an enormous subset of evals, but they couldn't catch, for whatever particular reason, the thing that was causing the issue. And they do say that they are grateful that the community has helped isolate these bugs and figure that out. So I want to say, like, until this started coming out, I was this close to about canceling my Claude Code subscription. I'm going to be honest with you. And I found I probably don't even need one of these big subscriptions, at least right now. Cerebrus Code, $50 a month. There's a GLM 4.5 subscription that's like $6, $3 for the first month. There's GPT or ChatGPT, GPT-5 for $20 a month. You get a pretty good rate. You get a pretty good amount of usage for that. So part of me was like, I might just abandon Claude 4 for now, like Claude Code for now. And if you go back, I've actually been accused of being paid by Anthropic, right? Like, this is coming from someone that is a massive Claude Code fan. Like, I was such an advocate for what Claude Code does and is that there were comments in my videos where people were like, I can't watch you anymore because you're being paid by Anthropic. And I'd reply to them, I'm like, yeah, I definitely have never taken any money from Anthropic, but at the same time, you go back a while ago, I was talking very positively about Gemini 2.5 Pro, then negatively about Gemini 2.5 Pro, because we get put in this cycle. And I'm going to talk about that cycle here in a minute. But before we do that, I just want to talk about jumping, like some of the Reddit posts. A lot of people are now jumping to OpenAI's Codex. And they have built a really interesting ecosystem here that honestly, I can't really argue with. If you're moving to Codex, I totally get it. GPT-5 is better than I expected. It's gotten better for me than what I had first saw when I used it originally. It still isn't top of my evals, but it feels good. The speed of it is what drives me nuts a little bit. The one thing I have actually come to really appreciate about GPT-5, and this person calls it out great, which is why I added this. No more being absolutely right. No more of this like fluffiness. We just get right to it. Like we don't need this, oh, you're right, I was being stupid. Like, oh, like why did I put that in local storage? I shouldn't store this sensitive stuff in local storage. That's the type of stuff I'm getting. And then when I call it out, I'm like, oh, wow, you're right. That is a terrible idea. That stuff drives me nuts. Now, GPT-5, I would say, on the other hand, it's a little bit less conversational than I would like. So I would like to be able to kind of work a bit more to tune that. But I love that it just gets straight to the point most of the times. It's a good middle ground. But you do have to prompt it a bit differently. And that will throw a lot of people off, including myself. I'm going to be totally honest with you. Originally with GPT-5, I was like, I don't know if it's worth the slowdown. And there are people I talk to that love GPT-5 high. I don't use high much because it is so ungodly slow. I will periodically for something big, and then I will let it run and just put it on auto mode and just see what happens. And I will tell you, most of the time, it's pretty dang good. So anyway, let me jump down to this other one. This person says that they went to Codex 1 week later. They claim that Claude Code is slow, bloated, and absurdly expensive if you actually go via API. That is, I 100% agree. I have tested via the API significantly over the last few days, and we're going to talk about some of that here in a little bit. And it is so ungodly expensive to use Claude Code via the API. And it just shows you how much value they're giving you with Claude Code, the max plan, where on the flip side of that, it's like, it's one of those things where I keep questioning how long is that going to last. And if you go back up here to this line, it makes me wonder, like, they can have really great intentions, but at the end of the day, they have to make money. And if they don't make money, this thing can't exist. So sometimes this becomes in conflict with one another to where they need to figure out a way to keep people happy, like, but still reduce their cost. So I just want to say, like, I do have a sneaking feeling that there is most likely conversation going on about how they can, potentially tune Claude Code, change limits or whatever to make it less token hungry, make it respond with less tokens, whatever it is to kind of lower the cost. It's all very, very subjective, though. I'll be honest with you. And it's because, I'm bouncing around all these different tools. I'm away from Claude Code for a while, come back. You kind of build these pictures in your head and they may or may not be true. So it's a very subjective. But I do want to say, like, I wasn't the only one to think that it was slow. Bloated, it's hard to say. I haven't actually deeply dug into how much memory it's using or things like that. But it is interesting. Now, this person just said it's completely neutered. And, this isn't enough information for me to go on. But the reason I put this one up here is because it was 18 hours ago. Now, I started putting this together over the weekend. So this is probably like 2 or 3 days ago now, just to be in total context. But it's interesting that people are still complaining about that. Because if we go back here, you can see that they've been fixing issues. And from around September 4th, we should have got some improvements. But the question is, did we really get some improvements? So I started thinking, I actually found someone that posted this. TLDR, downgrade to v10.51 for performance improvement. See my other post for details. So I looked at what 0.51 was. This is when they added native support for Windows. Isn't that interesting? Because right after this, supposedly, this is when the quality went way down. They also added like the /doctor. They added a bunch of other things. They increased auto compact warning from 60 to 80%. Fixed an issue with handling user directories with spaces, etc. Custom / commands, plan mode. They fixed some issues there. Now, this is a very light change list. I like this. It's totally fine. But I guarantee you there was probably changes in here that aren't listed on this. So if we go to the next version of this, so the next version of this would have been 1.0.52. What did we get? Added support for MCP server instructions. So how do we go to believe? Again, I'm totally speculating here. There was a bug introduced in this version, right? And the way they make it sound, because of the way they talk about the versions, is that it was probably something in Claude Code directly. I don't know that for a fact. It could have been something on the way they're routing or something on the server side. But we don't see any change here. I wouldn't think that adding support for MCP server instructions would be something that would cause an issue. And then to give you a little bit more context, here's 1.0.53. This is normally what changelets look like. This is not enough to go off of without it being open source. Just going to be totally honest about that. Now, if we go up to here, I updated to 1.0.112. I also tested this in 1.0.113. And I reran all my evals many times, probably too many times. This is where we were at the end of August. This is where we are now on version 1.0.112. And it's runtime variants with 1.0.113. So this is about where we are now. Is it still top? No, not top. But it is where I would expect it to be because in my opinion, I'm just going to be totally honest with you, all of this stuff is basically equal. I'm just being really clear. Like what we really care about is the percentage differences. If you're 1 or 2 or 3% different, you are not going to notice that. But I do believe you would notice this kind of difference. You would notice a difference like this with the way that I run my evals. And I think it's just so interesting to me that we're in this position now where we almost have gotten put into I would say, this cycle where, and I worry about this so much for everything. So something is released. So we get this new thing that comes out, and people freaking love it. I'm talking, we've got, I would say we've got people that are just here, they're smiling, we're getting good value. But then what ends up happening is, this company ultimately needs to make money. So what they sold you and what they need to actually get, they end up needing to, unfortunately, nerf things a little bit. So I'm just going to put nerf here. And this is an improper way. It's not a technical way to talk about it. But they do need to nerf things in some way. Like, what is the ways to nerf this? So in my mind, there's different ways to nerf it. So one would be something like limiting output. So basically this would be stuff like, hey, be succinct in what you're saying. This could be a system prompt change. So one of my theories has always been that they have different system prompts that they kind of inject in based on demand and usage. So an idea would be like, hey, I want you to be succinct. I don't want you to output as much. Or, hey, limit to only 10 tool calls versus whatever. Or, hey, I want you to only be able to read 100 lines at a time versus 500 lines at a time. This is my theory. Now, I do not know if this is true or not. But what does this allow them to do? It allows them to basically require, it basically allows them to slow down everything. So if you lower the amount of stuff that's done in a single tool call, that lowers the token demand on them, while at the same time extending out the time that your work is done. So they're kind of slowing down the entire thing. Now, is this happening? I don't know, because it's not open source. And some would speculate, in my opinion, that some would say, yeah, something like that's happening, or maybe it's going even bigger, and I'll talk about this here in a second. They're quantizing it. They're dynamically quantizing the model down to 1.58 bits. I've heard this a ton. I can't buy that, to be totally honest with you. Could it be true? 100%. But I don't like throwing out allegations. I don't like saying that this is definitively happening. What I want to talk about here is what could be happening. And my concern with all of these companies is they're going to get put into this cycle where eventually we're all going to be sad because this is so simplified, right? They release something. We're happy. Great value. They figure out they're losing money. They end up having to make some changes. So they loop over. People rebel. And then they eventually get to a point where people are like, meh, all right. We're okay. We're all right with that change. Maybe that 24,000 score is fine. We don't need to give you the full shebang. So that is one speculation. But they do state that they never degrade model performance. But that doesn't mean they don't degrade how the model's used. Do you kind of see my point here? So the thinking here is like, there's really like model performance. So there's model, and then there's tooling. So what they're saying here is they will never degrade this. So this, if I were to go like say this, so the model performance, they're saying it will be static. But what if I make my orange line tooling? So what if tooling is on par with this, but over time they need to degrade it a little bit, just a little, because what they want to do is they want to extend this out a little bit more. They want to make this take more time or less tokens. And actually, I'm gonna scratch this out. Less tokens, whichever way, yeah. Because but you get the point here. What I want to understand from them is they can be telling 100% the truth that they don't degrade model performance, but yet they are purposely degrading tooling. And that's a big distinction, which is why I go back to that technical report they're going to put out. Jump into Discord if you want to chat more about this, because I am fascinated by this. We really do have this cycle over and over again. I've seen it. I've seen it time and time again over my career. Let's talk about Uber. Uber comes out, man, I'm downtown San Francisco taking Ubers across town for $5, $8. Very cheap. You go there today, I haven't been there in a while. I get a ride from the airport to somewhere and it's like $55. So we release, we get happy, we use it, we all download the app, we love it. They have to nerf it some way. How do they nerf it? Well, in this case, they have to increase the price. And that is one way that Claude could do this. They could actually just increase the price of things. They could lower the limits of things. But they also could be limiting our tooling. And this is purely speculation. This is all like my thinking around this, is that maybe some of the changes they made were them trying to figure out a way to make it so that they weren't using so much. Now, let's talk about this. This is a post I did on X. I usually don't like to go down these rabbit holes, but this person posted that basically Claude was quantizing models down to 1.58 bits. And I said, do you have proof about quantized versions during the daytime? I've had that theory, but the claim seems a bit extreme. What I mean by that is I have the theory that something's changing. I always like to imagine they've got this giant button. Scotty, it's overheating. We need to push the button to slow things down. They hit that button, and then whatever happens with the system prompt or whatever's happening, it makes everything slow down. It releases some of the demand. Maybe the tokens aren't processing quite as fast. Maybe it's not putting out as many tokens. Maybe the number of tool calls that are happening is lower. Whatever it is, it releases some of that demand. But this person goes on and quotes themselves as saying they're the source of that. I tried to look into that, and there's no reason for me to believe that they are quantizing dynamically. I have no proof of that. It all comes back to where you think they are on that lineup here. Are they good actors or are they bad actors? So that dude, I think, leans towards them being bad actors. And I think I can't argue with that because they haven't been transparent. I kind of feel like a lot of it, they're sitting like here in my mind. And maybe I'm being a little bit too generous, and you might tell me that I'm being a little bit generous. I think they're struggling because they have to make money. They also are shipping stuff, so they have the bureaucracy of this big company. So there's things slipping through the cracks. There's people that are, like probably slowing things down. They're probably having meetings about stuff. I hope that's not how they work, but I've worked in big companies that can be that way. So when you put all that together, you end up in this spot where I understand how people can get to this conclusion. Even though it's a little bit harder on this person because I'm not a big fan of just being like, definitively, this is what's happening. I want to have conversations about what could be happening, but I don't want to go out there and say this is happening because we have no proof. But I also think you each have to kind of make up your own judgment on where we fall on that curve of like, do we think they're good actors or bad actors? And at the end of the day, I think they're now in a place where they have to be transparent. They have to do something because there is competition out there. I want competition. And for the longest time, I've been saying this for months. We need competition for Claude. I do not want to live in the world where the only model that we use is Claude 4 Sonnet, which is why I've been a big proponent for model selectors and having choice and local LLMs, because I do not want to be beholden to a single company no matter what. And no, I am not paid by anybody. I'm not paid by OpenAI. I literally do this for fun, but there's sometimes I just get frustrated with the state that we find ourselves in because it's just the same cycle over and over again, time and time again in my career. And we keep falling for it. I fall for it. I mean, I fall for it so many times. I fell for it with Uber. I fell for it with Netflix. I fell for it with, honestly, Claude Code to a certain point. Claude Code is still a great value. So it is not fully, I would not say, go cancel a Claude Code subscription. Use it. Get your money's worth out of it. But there are options now. And we need to put that pressure on Sonnet. I want to end with, this is probably the most likely scenario to me. This is where I've landed. The really stupid thing is that I don't think this is cost cutting, quantization, or one of those other shady theories. And this is where I'm at. Except for, I do have a sneaking suspicion that they're starting to get into this phase to where they need to think about how they actually make more money because they're going to need to raise more money. They've got to grow into their evaluation, which is enormous at this point. This person goes on to say, I think it's typical enterprise retardedness. And honestly, having been in enterprise companies before, I kind of agree. Look at this. AI safety, 300 internal meetings. I talked about this. I'm not saying AI safety isn't good. I'm not saying internal meetings are bad. But I have literally been sitting in meetings at these big companies thinking I am going to freaking die. I could have coded this thing 15 times already, yet here we are with 22 people in this meeting discussing how and why we should do this thing. Like, why are we wasting so many company resources to do this instead of doing actual work? How can we not just make the decision to try it? Like, why is it such a convoluted, complex thing to have something experimental or try this particular change, be open with everyone and do it, and then roll it out if it doesn't work? It just doesn't make sense to me. This person's comment, I'll let you sit here and read it a little bit, but I think it's where I have fallen personally. I think this is what's happening. But I also think there may be some optimization. I'm going to call it optimization around Claude Code itself to help limit the cost or the demand on the Anthropic side. Because if we go back to where I was before, if we think about Anthropic and their stability issues, it's not great. It's really not great. It's constantly down for me. So much so that in my production application, I've switched off of using Anthropic. I used to use them constantly. I still have a slight amount of my traffic running through Anthropic. Just a slight. The majority of my stuff does not run through Anthropic now because it would go down all the time and that impacted my customers. I can't have that. So anyway, I think that's going to wrap it up. I know I rambled a lot on this one, but I felt like it was just an interesting thing that I really have thought a lot about. And I know I've been away for a few days. I've been working on some really cool projects with Quinn 3 Next, GPT-5 Mini. Got a bunch of fun stuff planned. And if you happen to make it to the end, let me know in the comments below how far off you think I am. I just like having these conversations. Jump into Discord. Would love to talk more about it. Anyway, I love you guys. Peace out. Till next time.